Hello everyone, it's Pat from Calm Sea Cooks, and today we are going to make coconut ranger cookies. Now, the first ingredient I'm going to use is coconut here. Now this is inspired from cruises that Kathy and I have gone on in Royal Caribbean. They have Cafe Promenade is one of the venues on there, and they have these cookies that I'm going to try to reverse engineer today that are called Ranger cookies, and they're basically coconut cookies. So what I'm doing here first is I have some flaked coconut, and this is sweetened flaked coconut, that I'm going to dry out. So I'm going to toast the coconut. That's the first step in these cookies, I believe, is I'm going to use this toasted coconut. So this will take about 10 minutes or so in a 350 oven or 160 for you Celsius folks, something like that. And all we're looking for is to dry this out and to get this slightly brown. So that's our first step. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these in the oven. Okay, the oven was preheated to 350, and we'll let that go for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be back and we'll start putting our cookies together. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, we're ready to go for our next step. Our coconut has been toasted. This ends up volumetrically being about 2 cups of coconut. It's a little hard to do the weight because when you put it in the oven, you're going to dry it out. So just 2 cups or so. So let's do some of our measuring. So we're going to go ahead and get our ingredients together. Let's start with our sugar. Now again, anytime you make cookies, there's always a question about sugar. Combination white to brown sugar. These cookies are very chewy and quite molassesy, kind of. So I'm going to say that this is an all brown sugar cookie, and we're going to do about 300 grams of sugar, which is roughly a cup and a half of brown sugar. Let me help get some of this up without making a horrible mess. All right. Okay, so there we go with our brown sugar. Next we're going to do our flour. Flour is going to be, volumetrically it's 2 1/4 cups of flour. By weight, for me in my kitchen, that's going to be, each cup of flour is about 150 grams. So we're going to use about 335 grams of just plain flour, all-purpose flour, for our cookies. Again, when I bake, I really like to use weight, and if you're going to use weight, it's a lot easier to do the weight using not using imperial measures. It's just so much straightforward when you're using grams. Okay, so there we go. That is our flour. Now with the flour, we're going to need to put some leavening agents in there. So we're going to have baking soda, baking powder, and then flavoring agent will be salt. We're going to put a teaspoon of each one of these. When you get to these small measures, it's not worth weighing them. It's too hard. So just using your regular measures will be helpful. The salt I'm going to wait a second to do because I want to sift these ingredients before I mix them. So let me get something to sift this on, and we'll use what is my favorite multitasker in the kitchen, which is a paper towel. Try that again. My favorite multitasker in the kitchen, which is a paper plate. And we're gonna go ahead and sift our ingredients on there. That's the sugar, I'm sorry, that's the flour, baking soda, baking powder. And I'm just gonna sift this using our little dealio here. Okay, now the reason I didn't put the salt in right away is because I have kosher salt and it won't fit through that little strainer thing. So salt can go in at this point. All right, so we have our dry ingredients that are ready to go. Our wet ingredients are going to consist of our flour that we measured, 2 sticks of butter, so that's about 226 grams of butter. This is room temperature butter. Always important to have room temperature ingredients when you make cookies. It just makes life easier. 2 eggs, and we should be good to go. So let's get our mixer and we'll start the process. Okay, we have our ingredients all ready to go. We have our mixer in place and we can go ahead and start. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cream our sugar and eggs together. I'm sorry, our butter and our sugar together. So let's start by putting our butter in the mixer. Again, this is 2 sticks, so 8 ounces of butter, 226 grams of butter. Okay, we'll put our second stick of butter in there. Softened butter will help the sugar be able to incorporate better, so you want to have that room temperature. Here's our sugar. We can go ahead and put all that in there at once. It's our 300 grams of sugar, and we'll go ahead and turn this on. Helps if I put this up. This will take about a minute or so to, maybe 2 minutes to incorporate. You want to see kind of a change in color of the butter. You want to see it become really pretty much one. You can speed it up to a point. If it gets to going too fast, it's just going to throw it all over the place. Okay, it's been going for, I'm getting on a couple minutes. I'm going to start adding eggs, which is our next thing. I'm going to add these one at a time. I like to put them in a separate container just to make sure I don't get any yolks or shells in there. I'm going to turn it down to lower, add the egg, and turn it back up again. You want to incorporate each egg one at a time, making sure it's fully incorporated before you add the next one. Okay, we can go ahead and add the next one. Just slow it down again. In it goes. We'll speed it up. Let this go for a while. Now the astute of you has noticed the similarity of this recipe to making like chocolate chip cookies. They're very, very similar. At least I'm going to make them very similar because I think these Ranger cookies are pretty close to chocolate chip cookies, except substituting the toasted coconut for the chocolate chips, and I'm just going to kind of go with that, with one slight change. Now, the next addition when you're making chocolate chip cookies would be to add vanilla. I don't really taste the vanilla in the Ranger cookies that I've had, so I'm gonna skip that. And we're going to start by, with our mixer turned low, going to start adding our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients slowly. If you do this too quickly, you will make a mess. You will have flour all over the place, and that's not good. So that's where your paper plate helps out a lot, because I can bend it and kind of doink it and get all the flour in there without making too big of a mess. Okay, let's let this incorporate, turn it up a little bit. Okay, before we go to our last step, I'm just gonna knock down, scrape the bowl here, and give it a little bit more. Okay. And we'll raise that up. Wanted to go the wrong way. And give it a little mix. Okay, I'm going to slow it down again and add our last ingredient. Here comes our toasted coconut on board. So I'm just going to add that slowly. And again, volumetrically, this was about 2 cups, and then it was toasted for about 10 minutes. And I'm just going to mix that about a little bit. You can be a little more aggressive with the coconut as opposed to like if this was chocolate chips. Chocolate chips, you couldn't go this fast, you'd break the chips, which is not what you really want to do. Alright. So I'm going to call that done. I'm going to drop the bowl and slowly speed our blade up here to try to knock off some of the cookies. Okay. So let me scrape some of this off while I'm talking. The next step is to make the cookies. So we have some choices of how we're going to do that. First choice is, am I going to refrigerate the dough? If I wanted like thinner cookies that spread out a lot, I would maybe cook the cookies right now, because the butter that's in here hasn't had a chance to cool. So when it goes into the oven, it's going to spread out right away, and spread out more than it would if you refrigerated it. So number one choice, I'm going to refrigerate it. Then we have to choose the temperature that we're going to cook the cookies at. Chocolate chip cookies, I would normally cook at 365, which is about, what is that? It's about 185, something like that, Celsius. Don't trust my math. And then how long we're going to cook them. I'm going to say probably very similar to chocolate chip cookies, maybe a smidge longer. So I'm going to say 12 minutes. But first thing what we're going to do is we're going to chill this dough. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the refrigerator for about at least an hour to let it the butter kind of go back to being a little more firm. And that'll help with how we want the cookies to look when they're done. All right, so in the refrigerator it goes. I'll set the oven to 365, and we'll be back in about an hour. Okay, we are back. We have chilled our cookie dough, and we're going to get ready to dole this out and bake these. I'm going to use our number 10 scooper. I'm gonna give it a little shot of the nose stick spray, and just go ahead and place these. I have a half sheet pan with some parchment paper on it. There's a sill pad underneath here that has little targets on there that help me with spacing these, and I have 12 to go. Okay, we have them all doled out. We're going to put them in the oven for 12 minutes, oven set at 365. And I'm really kind of winging this, so I'm going to have to check to make sure that we're not doing anything funky. I'm going to try to turn these about halfway through, and we'll see how we go. Okay, we are nearly there. Our cookies have been in the oven for 12 minutes. I did turn them at about 5. They're done. And we'll see what they look like. Okay, I'm gonna let them go for another 2 minutes. They're still a little wet on the top, and they're a little bit blonde still. So again, this is an experiment, so I'm just testing. So we'll come back in 2 minutes. Okay, so I let them go another 2 minutes, so total cook time was 14 minutes. I like the color a lot better now. I'm not touching these for about 5 minutes before I put them on the cooling rack. They need to set, so we'll give them 5 minutes time to rest. I'll set my timer for 5 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and give these a try. They look good. We'll see how it goes. Be back in 5. All right, 5 minutes has passed. Let's go ahead and move these over to our tray. If you do this without waiting, you're gonna make a mess of them. Just be patient before you move them to a cooling rack. Otherwise, they haven't set yet, and you'll get half a cookie, and yeah. I'm really happy with the color. It's very similar to what you get on board. They look the same. Let's see. Let me give one a taste, and we'll see how we do. The bottom is nice. They're chewy. That's good. Very similar in taste. I think we pretty much got really close to this. Yeah, I'm totally happy with these. I'll go ahead and cook the rest of them off, bake the rest of them off, and that'll be it. So, it's Pat from Calm Sea Cooks. We've done some Royal Caribbean Ranger cookies today. Pretty much make chocolate chips and substitute toasted coconut for the chocolate chip part of it, and you get pretty darn close. I imagine if you really wanted to, you could keep the chocolate chips and add the coconut. There you go. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and the thumbs up helps us out a great deal, and we will talk to you on the next one. Goodbye. Fish my cookie.